Ladies and gentlemen, coming soon, a podcast you've all been waiting for. The movie podcast to end all movie podcasts. A podcast that discusses and critiques the best of the best and the worst of the worst movies playing at a theater near you. With a host whose opinions have been deemed as fact by your favorite fact checkers. And that's a fact. Without further ado, let me introduce you to the movie maestro, the tyrant of theater, the gumshoe of review, the man that makes theater employees and Hollywood execs shiver by his mere presence. Ladies and gentlemen, the judge, the jury, the sultan of cinema, Justin Henson. Welcome to the Movie Wire.
Welcome to this week's edition of The Movie Wire. I'm your host, Justin Henson, and welcome to the show. We have a fantastic show this week with 4 brand new theatrical reviews. This week on the show, not all races can be won in the 10th installment to the popular Fast and the Furious franchise in Fast 10. Based on the international anime sensation, Pegasus will rise to protect the goddess of war in the live-action film Knights of the Zodiac. Charlie Day is ready for his close-up directing, writing, and starring as a fool for love becomes an accidental celebrity, only to lose it all in Fool's Paradise. And finally, our favorite 50 Shades of Grey book club returns to take over Italy and tell dirty grandma jokes in Book Club 2, The Next Chapter. We have a lot to cover, so let's jump right into it. Ready for my verdict? Let's go.
Out of the windows to watch a roar and a burst of flame. The Movie Wire podcast. We just need people like me.
Podcast for hot and trending movies.
The Wire.
And here we go.
When the goddess of war reincarnates in the body of a young girl, street orphan Seiya discovers that he is destined to protect her and save the world, but only if he can face his own past and become a Knight of the Zodiac.
I had a vision. People burning. Everything destroyed. It was Athena. She was doing it. I was doing it.
We won't let that happen, will we? I saw what you did in the ring. I knew it had to be you, Seiya. What if I told you Sienna here is the reincarnation of the goddess Athena? And you are destined to become one of her guardian knights.
How does it feel to be a goddess?
Sometimes I feel like I'm a guest in my own body.
Are you ready to start your training? The Pegasus Knight is brave, humble, and committed to protecting Athena with his life.
How the hell did you do that?
The war that awaits us is unlike any other before. I must save the rest of us from her.
You think I wanted any of this?
Power is a liability. Once he learns to control it, no living man will be able to stop him.
You might want to buckle up.
Thought you were the only knight in town?
From the opening scene of the very first act, Knights of the Zodiac caught my attention. It had a great color contrast, a cartoonish feel of special effects against the dark backdrops that were eye-pleasing, music and sound that were noticeably good. There's a scene in the beginning where we have our main character, orphan fighter Sia, played by Makanu, standing in a back alley with a mysterious man, Almond Kiddo, played by Sean Bean, who is looking to recruit him as a knight to protect his daughter Mirren, a girl that is destined to become the goddess of war, played by Caitlin Hudson. As they are talking in this dark alley, we can hear the audio exaggerate the raindrops that are falling against the pavement. It was an absolutely stunning inclusion of the audience in this setting. I was taken by surprise in the first act as I looked at the movie poster as I was walking into the theater. I started to grumble, not knowing anything about this film but the synopsis. I tilted my head back as I opened the door to the theater as throwing an adult tantrum not wanting to go in. But the first act reminded me of Mortal Kombat with a mix of 80s cheesiness action flicks with some really smart technical utilization. From the camera shots, the angles, the tiny details in the opening fights, there was a lot to like in the first act. But then we go into the second act, the third act, all the way to the climax. And during these acts, I couldn't tell you how many times my eyes rolled to the back of my head. Now, the film was directed by Thomas Baginski, which the problem doesn't lay with the director here. Baginski had some great moments in this film. But the challenge Baginski is trying to accomplish is that he's trying to polish and scrub shit off of a poorly written script. And the more and harder he tries to polish this shit off the movie, it becomes more apparent that his direction is attempting to distract from the shit material that won't come off. But it is a valid effort by Thomas Baginski. Knights of the Zodiac is based on the original stories and characters from the Magna Saint Sia by Musami Kuramada. And the ones that adapted this monstrosity are Josh Campbell and Matt Strucken from 10 Cloverfield Lane and Keel Murray from Cars 1 and 3. Now, there is a lot of story in Knights of the Zodiac and a lot of subtext for the audience to go over. This writing team from films with basic simplistic dialogue of the past was absolutely apparent. It was all over their head, and they couldn't adapt themselves to adapt a heavy story like this. Now, I will be blunt. If it takes you the entire movie's runtime to explain and have your characters explain what the movie is about, your movie adaptation sucks. It should have ended up ripped up, caught on fire, and buried to ensure that nobody will ever witness it. It is a story with heavy character backgrounds, and it feels like the writers treat it like they're writing a children's book and then trying to teach a 2-hour class about what the book was about. Now, I don't want to say that director Thomas Baginski is flawless in his execution here, because the character direction when it comes to the characters on screen are all over acting, and at times it's very hard to watch. But at the same time, if you listen to the words that are spoken on screen, it's so elementary. I can imagine our cast having a hard time with their character motivations. They have very little to work with, where I can picture having our talent backed in a corner on what they can do with the material other than thinking they're performing for a school play. The only two talents that seems to keep their performances subtle and passable are Famke Janssen from the original X-Men trilogy as Jean Grey and Sean Bean as Almond Kiddo. The rest of the cast feels like they are coming off of a kids' TV show, but we also have our main goddess Sienna, the god of war played by Madison Eisman from the Jumanji films, who we can see in her performance that she knows the material is a trash compactor because the only thing she can really do with the delivered dialogue is just speak it and go through the motions. She does not look like she's having a good time with this movie or any sort of creativity to work with the material. And as we go through the second half of the film, we start to get this vibe that we have seen this type of action somewhere before. From the cheesy fight scenes, to the costumes, to the over-the-top dialogue. I felt I was watching an episode from the Power Rangers show from the 1990s. The fight scenes tend to decrescendo in quality as the film goes on, and it starts to get extremely lazy with the special effects. There's a scene where the characters get their godlike armor with an attempt at special effects. I wanted to stand up and yell, "It's morphin' time!" We go from eye-pleasing special effects from colors to utter low-budget cheesiness. I was hoping for the Power Rangers to interrupt this movie and just take it over. It wouldn't have made sense, but at least it would have made it at least watchable. Knights of the Zodiac was like opening up a Christmas present and seeing a box of something you have always wanted, but never thought you would get. But as soon as you open that box, you realize it's just a pair of plain white ankle socks that's not even the right size. The opening of this movie sets the bar too high from what would become an utter waste of time, that you will spend more time checking your watch than paying attention to the movie. I'm giving Knights of the Zodiac 1 star.
Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby.
Now, before we get on with the rest of the show, make sure you check out my reviews on previous episodes for movies that just became available to rent, buy, or stream now. Now available. The story of the Mario Brothers as they take on King Koopa in the Super Mario Brothers movie, which couldn't quite reach star power, receiving 2.5 stars. An ex-soldier tries to protect his gold by kicking the crap out of some Nazis, which makes this the feel-good movie of the year, receiving 3 stars. The story of boxing legend George Foreman in Big George Foreman, the miraculous story of the once and future heavyweight champion of the world, which was a complete knockout in round 1, receiving 1.5 stars. Big Trouble Little Sister, when Little Sister, who wants to become a stunt woman, tries to stop her big sister's wedding in Polite Society, which was polite enough to give an energetic and entertaining ride with 3 stars. Mommy Will Love You to Death in Evil Dead Rise, which didn't rise enough and only received 2.5 stars. Who Needs Heroes When You Have Thieves in Dungeons & Dragons Honor Among Thieves, which journeyed its way to 3 stars. And finally, it sucks to be him in the story of Dracula's assistant in Renfield, which didn't suck at all, receiving 3 stars. You can find those reviews on my previous episodes, and just a reminder, if you haven't yet, make sure you hit follow or subscribe, and please leave me a review on Apple Podcasts. And make sure to follow me on Instagram, Twitter, and Letterboxd at MovieWire Show. Now it's that time of year again in the Seattle area where we have the Snohomish Film Festival. You can now submit your film into the festival no matter where you're at by going to www.filmfreeway.com/Snohomish Film Festival. We've had a lot of fantastic movies and fantastic talent. Don't wait to the last minute to submit. I cannot wait to see your movie. Now lastly, there is a podcast that I listen to that I just love talking about on this show. This podcast focuses on forgotten films or films that just deserve to have a revisit. I always look forward to seeing what movies he's going to bring to the table with each episode. He is a great supporter of the show, a good friend, and I always have an amazing time when we get together to geek out over certain films. And that's Antonio over the Cult-Worthy Cinema Podcast. Make sure you follow, subscribe, and take a listen to his show. His link will be in the description of this episode. Let's hear from Antonio now.
The Cult-Worthy Podcast. Join me, Antonio Palacios, each week as I guide you through a never-ending sea of obscure cinema and cult-worthy gems that deserve a rediscovery. Find me on all listening platforms and at thecultworthy.com. The Cult-Worthy Podcast. Join us.
A Fool for Love becomes an accidental celebrity, only to lose it all in the directorial debut of Charlie Day in Fool's Paradise.
The patient has lost the ability to speak. He's not deaf, and he's technically not mute. With the proper amount of care, it's possible that he could regain his understanding of the world, his ability to speak.
What's our first course of action?
Well, the state is not going to pay for any of that, so we are going to put his ass on the first bus downtown.
What do you mean he won't get out of the trailer? Get in. Take a look at this guy.
What about him?
He's a dead ringer for you.
Man don't look nothing like me. I mean, look at him. He's too short.
Get finished the day for you. Action. Cut. Latte pronto.
Excuse me, Mr. Pronto. Can I call you Latte?
Latte! Latte pronto! Latte pronto!
Is that your name?
Amazing. You and me are gonna do big things, pal.
Mad respect, bro.
Move! Stars coming through!
Welcome to your team. You got me, your agent, got your manager, lawyer, publicist, personal assistant, plus we got you an intern.
You have got a big film premiere tomorrow night. Does that make you a little nervous?
This was a gift from Prince Harry. It was one of the original Knights of the Round Table sword or something. Can't really remember because I wasn't listening when he gave it to me.
Make love to me, Latte.
Bing, bang, boom. A million dizzy fiddles playing. Bing, bang, boom. Began to take my breath away. Bing, bang, boom. I'm comfy as a jumping.
The phone is not ringing.
Don't worry, pal. I'll get us back on top.
I know you think what's been happening to your career is accidental. Everything is by design.
Who are you really, Latte Pronto?
Bing, bang, bing, bang, bing, bang, bing, bang, bing, bang, bing, bang,
And playtime!
Gotta get down, big time.
Written, directed, and starring Charlie Day, this is a movie that makes you crawl into Charlie Day's head, and when you finally come out, you come out feeling like you just woke up from a night of drinking and you have no idea where the hell you're at. Now, Charlie Day named his character Latte Pronto, and I will have to give him a thumbs up on that one because it fits into the movie perfectly. You will need multiple lattes to get through this movie, and by the halfway mark, you want to leave the movie pronto. But I will say this up front before I really let this movie have it, that I appreciate Charlie Day's intent on the obvious vision to bring homage and nods to the silent film genre and the attempt at the silent physical comedy in honor of legends like Buster Keaton, Harold Lloyd, and of course Charlie Chaplin. When it comes to music, tone, and overall feel, the first 15 to 20 minutes generously is mostly successful in this, and I really appreciated that intent of what Day is trying to do here. But with that said, if there was a movie that fully described Charlie Day's thought process, this would be it. Fool's Paradise plays like Charlie Day's character from Always Sunny in Philadelphia, intensely sporadic and all over the place. The movie's main appeal is the amazing cast. Now, I used to use Movie 43 as a prime example of either a bait and switch or a domino effect of convincing one A-list celebrity to join the cast, then the rest will follow. Fool's Paradise will now be my go-to example of this, with an incredible cast including Kate Beckinsale, Ken Jeong, Adrian Brody, Jason Sudeikis, Ray Liotta, Jason Bateman, Steve Coulter, Jimmy Simpson, and John Malkovich. Good God, you know agents got fired over this one. The one thing Movie 43 has over this film is at least Movie 43 made me laugh a couple times. Fool's Paradise, as I sat in the theater with other moviegoers, the room sat silent for a majority of the movie, and just about every joke fell flat. Charlie Day plays Latte Pronto, in which we don't really know his last name, only the one that is assigned to him, due to the fact he can't or won't talk, and is highly influenced by others, where doctors described where he isn't a mute, and as a matter of fact, they don't know what's wrong with him. His condition doesn't really fall into anything in the medical journal, but what the doctor does know is nobody's gonna pay for him to be hospitalized, so they just shove him on a bus to the city. The movie wastes no time, and it just cuts to the chase of the motivation of Latte Pronto by just having a doctor come on screen and give us a summary of what's wrong with his character, with openly admitting they haven't done any tests, they don't know what's wrong with him, and he is a subject that he has never seen before. And then away we go with the placing of Latte Pronto in an obvious setup for potential physical and humorous situations, exploiting the intended main driver of Latte not being able to talk. Now, enter the next setup for Latte Pronto. As he is on the streets, he is discovered by a producer, and yes, that is his name, is just producer in the credits. And producer is played by the late and great Ray Liotta, who seeks out to use Latte Pronto as a lookalike to a difficult and hard to work with celebrity. And there we have it, the origin story of Latte Pronto. The problem we have with this film is that Day never really takes advantage of the humor of this. He just wanders each scene and lets the supporting cast move him from one spot to another, with Day's character adding nothing but acting like a prop. This would have been a better formula for Weekend at Bernie's 3. After halfway through the movie, I kept picturing the return of Andrew McCarthy and Jonathan Silverman as Larry and Richard on each side of Latte Pronto, moving the body around. And I thought to myself, this would have worked as a Weekend at Bernie's sequel. And what Charlie Day does to attempt to compensate for the lack of his character not talking is that he makes almost every single character rapid fire their lines and deliver them at the top of their lungs, as if the movie thinks we speak a different language, and if they yell their lines out loud enough, the audience will understand them better and be like, oh, that's supposed to be funny. But it is absolutely obnoxious and annoying. The cast is never balanced, and we have Day that doesn't talk, then we have everybody else that feels like they're trying to yell for help to get out of this movie. As a writer, Charlie Day, you can tell, hasn't exercised his writing skills for a full-length motion picture. This is a drastic tone and feel difference between the first and last half of the movie, where the first 30 minutes or so, it's okay, it's tolerable. Anything after that, it's an absolute nightmare. And then going into the second half of the movie, he realizes his comedy isn't solid, so he attempts to add more symbolic messaging with even less funny moments and situations. At one point, the supporting cast is doing all the heavy lifting, and we beg the question if Charlie Day even needs to be in this film. His physical performance is underwhelming, and he adds really nothing memorable. There is little to no physical comedy forte that Day brings to the table. He is literally just wandering each scene around like a moron, surrounded by an absolute ensemble of annoying characters, which is a complete disappointment because Charlie Day has a likability on screen, and he has proven to have a talent for comedy from his previous works. But each and every character is treated like props or MCs for introducing the next scenario for Latte Pronto will be part of. And after halfway through the movie, we have lost faith that Day will produce any sort of comedy in his performance, and we could care less about what happens to Latte next. By the time the credits roll, I had no idea what the point was, what the messaging was, or what genre of movie this wanted to be. I got the hint of an attempt at meta humor with a mix of dry humor, but if you're a fan of dry humor, it would be cheaper and more fun to make a trip to the hardware store and buy some sand and shoving it in your mouth. Fool's Paradise is a complete mess of a movie, from the writing direction to the main character and supporting characters. Everything that Charlie Day had his hands on. All of it crashes and burns. The only thing that audiences will find amusing is the appearances of familiar faces on screen. By the time the credits roll, I just shook my head and thought, oh no, Charlie. No. I'm giving Fool's Paradise 1 star. The sequel to 2018's Book Club follows a new journey of our 4 best friends as they put down their 50 Shades of Grey books and take a trip to Italy for the fun girls trip they never had. In Book Club, The Next Chapter.
Hello, you've reached the home of the retired and gifted. Where are you?
I'm in a church. What? Are you serious? We're looking for a venue for the wedding.
You are going to get married in a church? I'm shocked you didn't burst into flames as you crossed the threshold. To Viv and Arthur. Oh, thank you.
I think we should all go to Italy.
Italy? Whoa.
We'll make it Viv's bachelorette. A bachelorette trip? What are we doing?
I think it's very romantic.
But it's also nuts.
Now it's mambo Italiano, mambo.
Rome is a great walking city.
Quelle donne, le viti più vecchie danno l'uva più dolce.
What did he say?
The older the vines, the sweeter the fruit.
Oh,
yes, we still got it.
I'm delighted that you'll be joining us tonight.
There's no problem if 4 random women show up.
This is Italy. There's always room for random, beautiful women.
Gianni,
Who is Gianna?
what are you doing here?
This is my cooking school.
Wow.
I'm here to start an amuse bouche.
I think somebody's bouche is already quite amused. It's too bridal. It's not bridal enough.
Gorgeous.
Someone else next.
Don't move. What are you doing?
That would be me. We're best friends for 50 years.
And you? Married. Marriage.
My solo act is finally coming to a close.
You're the bravest person I know.
The only question is, how will we mess this all up? I can't wait to find out.
Is it too soon to talk about who we're going to eat first?
I think we all know.
Hey. How does a woman in her 70s end up getting married? She takes control of her own destiny. This is a bachelorette party. You know what that means?
We go see naked men. What's the protocol here? Where do I stuff the dollar bills?
Now, it just seems lately each week seems to bring one rom-com or romantic movie to the table on my show, and most of those lately have brought no sense of uniqueness, charm, relatability, or believability. Who would have thought that a group of 70-year-old ladies come center stage to show audiences how it's done? The first book club I wasn't really a fan of. It relied too heavy on the 50 Shades shock factor, and used the vehicle to stretch one single running joke into a 90-minute romp. And there was also a certain uncomfort between the chemistry and performances with our main characters, Diane, Vivian, Sharon, and Carol, played of course by Diane Keaton, Jane Fonda, Candice Bergen, and Mary Steinberg. Now this one, even though called Book Club, could have almost been a completely separate film, and nobody would have really known the difference. There is no book nor book club, but rather a group of 4 best friends that go on a trip to Italy. It's a simplistic plot with no single running joke nor a single book to constrain the comedy. But in this kind of comedic storytelling, it does run into the danger of becoming heavy and relying on the situational comedy aspect. And this would mean that these 4 young ladies are really going to have to focus on their comedic timing and the chemistry to really make this work. And I have to say, when these 4 talented actresses lose the books that act like chains to hold the story and comedy back, we begin to realize that these are some very naughty 70-year-old ladies that really let loose and have some fun, that don't really censor anything that they say, and at times it's raunchy, but it's delivered in an innocent way that makes this comedy work so well. Now, there are certain times, actually a lot of times, that the actual jokes do fall flat. But even when the jokes fall flat, the chemistry between the cast is such a vast improvement from the first film, we can't help but smile. And this is where I give writer-director Bill Holderman and writer Aaron Sims credit here. The only credits these two have to their name is the first book club and now this sequel. And you can tell they took some critique and insight from the first film and applied it to attempt to make this one successful. It almost feels like the first one was an alley-oop to this film as an origin story to really make this movie successful. Now in episode 70, I had Josh so kindly drop in from the Talking Smack podcast to help do a rom-com special. I reviewed A Tourist Guide to Love that's streaming on Netflix right now, and one of my complaints was that the utilization of the environment and settings to really help support these characters to give a feeling of romance or take the viewer on a romantic getaway was seriously lacking. They didn't utilize it appropriately. It just seems like we are just in a normal setting. And this is where Book Club The Final Chapter gets it so right. From a boat in Venice to the beautiful architecture of the buildings, Bill Holderman and cinematographer Andrew Dunn hits a bullseye, where it's not overly shot, but it's integrated with our characters with smart wide-angle shots to capture pivotal moments to give the viewer this sense of a romantic getaway. And when we do get just shots of the environment, it's like a looking glass from our character's point of view, and it's beautifully shot and we feel like we're there. I felt I was on a trip myself along with our four ladies, just enjoying the company and the scenery. Now I spoke to the chemistry of the first movie just a moment ago. Keaton, Fonda, Bergen, and Steinberg seem to find their footing, and it's a drastic improvement from the first movie. They all look like they're actually having fun, and as we all know in a comedy, when the cast looks to be having fun, then the viewer is more likely than not to have fun as well. But what I will point out is that there are times where we can feel a sense of improvisation in the conversations because it comes across at times as rambling between the friends that doesn't really seem to go anywhere. Then the cast seems to realize this conversation isn't going anywhere, and that's when we get kind of a decrescendo in our actresses' voices, like it's a lack of confidence. Then our actresses just start staring at each other and smiling at one another. As we get into the third and fourth act of this movie, this is where Book Club walks a very thin line on getting too caught up in the situational comedy. And the material they put in is recycled material that we again have seen over and over and over again. And it doesn't add anything new, it's still a predictable outcome. But the film does such a great job at the build-up, even when these cliche moments happen, we kind of just smile and go along with it and think, you know what, it's okay, you've earned it. You have your predictable cliche moment here. Even during these moments, I still have a smile on my face while watching. It's an earned final act of silly, unbelievable fun. Book Club The Final Chapter isn't without its flaws, but for what it's worth, it's sweet, fun, and innocent, but our sweet old ladies can be a little naughty when they want to be. It will at least put a smile on your face during the runtime and make you feel good while leaving the theater. Out of all the rom-coms, comedies, romantic comedies over the past few weeks, this is the one that knows how to make the viewer feel good. I'm giving Book Club The Next Chapter 3 stars. So hard to keep track and even have time to read all the trending topics on the web. Now there's a new app to help with all of those problems. Newsly is an audio app for iOS and Android. It picks up web articles about the most trending topics on the web at any given moment and reads them to you in a natural human voice. For the first time in the history of the internet, the entire web becomes listenable. Browse articles from topics you choose and start playing. You can follow any topic as specific as you like, from sports, science, to Bitcoin. You can even follow Kardashian. It will find you the latest articles and read them to you out loud. And guess what? They have podcasts as well. Explore trending podcasts from over 50 countries. The Movie Wire is now a featured podcast on the Newsly app. Download and use Newsly for free now. The link will be in the description of this episode. You can also use one of my promo codes that you will find in the description as well to get you a 1-month free premium subscription. Stop scrolling, start listening, download Newsly today. The Fast and the Furious family are targeted by the vengeful son of a drug kingpin in the, Jesus Christ, never-ending 10th installment of the Fast and Furious franchise in Fast 10.
The great Dom Toretto. If you never would have gotten behind that wheel, I'd never be the man I am today. And now, I am the man who's going to break your family. Piece by piece.
The devil's coming.
Boom. Tommy, I knew you would come for me. So how about we all just start shooting each other? Time to end this.
Let's dig some graves.
You are not to be trusted.
Hey, you ain't on my Christmas list either.
Cavalry's here.
Cheers. We need weapons and cars.
Cannon cars. Do you like surprises? I adore them.
I'd stay down if I was you.
You'll need to hit me harder for that.
The game's over, Dom. You lose. This is your last ride. Then you might want to buckle up.
Now, this seems to be a running joke at this point on how many movies a studio can pump out of this franchise and squeeze every remaining drop of storytelling and character progression from this benign 22-year-old concept. Now, I remember working as a projectionist and a manager at a local theater back in 2001 when the original Fast and Furious came out. It was around 1 in the morning, Thursday night, Friday morning, whatever it may be, and I was finished building the original Fast and Furious, as well as I believe it was Dr. Dolittle 2. And I was about to do my normal late night, early morning Thursday nights into the early morning of Friday screening of both films, which I decided to be Fast and the Furious going first, really knowing nothing about cars or many of the cast members other than Van Diesel from watching Pitch Black the prior year. And I believe this was my high school graduation week, and I was exhausted and dreading being up until 5 a.m. on these two movies that I really didn't want to see, just to ensure my build was correct. As the night went on, I assumed my normal screening position, which was my favorite theater number, which seated about 1,100 people in my dead center seat, sitting in seats you don't see in theaters anymore. And that seat, by the way, I still have for when they remodeled that theater, and it's still sitting in my home, and I still like to casually screen movies from it. Now, when the credits rolled, I thought it was an okay watch. It didn't blow my mind, and in no way did I expect it to become a sequel, let alone a franchise of 10 movies and still going after 22 years in the making. After the movies were done, it was probably around 4:35 a.m. I go home, get some sleep. I go back into work 4 p.m. Friday, opening day of the Fast and the Furious. I get into the parking lot and I see parking spots full of these custom beautiful cars, a big line at the box office that wrapped around the building. At the end of the night, seeing reactions from the audience, I realized this might not be a movie that I can just fully relate to. Because as people were walking out, people seemed to really enjoy the movie. People went out to the parking lot, just read their engines, and seemed like they were having a good time. And as the evolution of the franchise went on, it became more than just a movie showing off cars. It became a ridiculous, pure popcorn action extravaganza. And I always joke when the new Fast and Furious movie comes out that they just need to put this cast into space already, because that's a level of pure stretch and ridiculousness it has become. From unrealistic car chases, submarines, big explosions, and action scenes that really don't make any sense, this, in a way, I'm starting to understand that even though these movies have turned into a farce of entertainment, but an intent to reach multiple demographics and not just car lovers. Now, are the more recent Fast and Furious movies more entertaining than the first film? In my eyes, yes. They are successful in creating a basic story and making a spectacle of itself, but is it successful in any other aspect, as character progression, smart dialogue, inserting thought-provoking mindsets and thought? Absolutely not. I think you get more thought-provoking storylines at the circus versus going to a Fast and Furious movie. And I've said it before, at times that is okay if that's the film's intent. And the Fast and the Furious films, they're not trying to be that. They know exactly what they're trying to do. And honestly, if I'm flipping through TV stations in the future and I have a choice between the original Fast and the Furious or one of the newer ones, I would purely go with one of the newer ones just out of pure entertainment value. And that's even though the film was a lot more thought out and the characters did have some substance to it, but it's not one of those movies that I feel I need to go back and revisit. Fast X brings on director Louis Leterrier from the original Transporter films, The Incredible Hulk, and Now You See Me. And the writing team of Dan Mazzou from Wrath of the Titans and returning Justin Lin from Fast 9. And you can expect to see a lot of the returning cast of players from the previous Fast and the Furious films. There's nothing new or fresh that our new director brings to the table, nor the writers. They stay pretty close to what the audiences and viewers flood the theaters to see. With one noticeable change, that Fast X has one of the more lengthy runtimes out of the franchise, and we can usually expect a certain formula coming from all of these films. With now having 10 films, you can expect the filmmakers have a certain format to go off of to stay consistent with their demographic. The Fast and the Furious formula, we kind of see the same thing. We see a slow movie story progression in the first half, listening to the cast say and refer to family over 1,000 times, and then an introduction to our villain or threat. And I swear to God, I do want to go see this movie again just to see how many times they say the word family in it. It drove me crazy. Then we have the second half, which usually kicks us off with an over-the-top action scene and never slows down from there to become an over-the-top, ridiculous, and a far-fetched circus. For those looking for the same old formula, you won't be disappointed. Fast X does have one of the more over-the-top second halves from the franchise, which I will admit did entertain me and kept my eyes glued on the screen. I couldn't look away. Even when my eyes started to roll, they were commanded to roll back forwards to watch what was happening on screen. I did have a good time in the second half, but many may be a little frustrated on the final 5 minutes. But here's the deal, even though ridiculous and it is more entertaining than it deserves to be in the second half, that doesn't make up for the first half. And again, with the extra long runtime, Fast X really does make the audience work and test our patience to actually get to something entertaining. There are a lot of characters being thrown around from setting to setting, and at one point I shook my head quickly to ask, why is that character there and how did that character get there? But of course, Fast X, it doesn't need to explain anything because it's Fast and the Furious. Audiences don't need explanation. This is the assumption of the demographic, but at the same time, it tries to create more of a plot than it needs to. It tries to overcomplicate the intent. It's trying to be a magician that moves one coin to another, and we ask ourselves how. And this goes on for the biggest chunk of the movie until we reach a fight scene in an underground facility that I have to say was pretty cool. And then we start to recognize our Fast and Furious movie. And again, this is the point where it does not slow down. It goes full throttle. Now, when I say over the top in the second half, if you think that previous Fast and Furious movies leaned on the unbelievable scenario aspect, this most recent edition hits the throttle and the filmmakers just say, I don't care how stupid it is, I'm doing it anyway. And the difference we get from this ludicrous romp compared to the other Fast and Furious movies is in previous films, they mildly and subtly attempt to mask how unbelievable it is. And I said subtly and mildly, even though it's not successful in the previous movies. This one makes it 100% apparent from the cast performances and the dialogue that it's just having fun with itself. I mean, we do have a scene where we have John Cena, who plays Jacob, hop on a commercial plane ride, only to sneak in the luggage compartment to build a makeshift plane while already inside a plane and use as many vodka bottles as fuel to escape this plane. And if it wasn't for John Cena's always present half smile that always makes him look like a 5-year-old that did something wrong at any given time, then this scene would have fallen flat. But it is absolutely comical on how over the top the filmmakers are willing to take this film. The biggest highlight of the film was Jason Momoa as Dante, our flamboyant childlike villain who matches the ridiculousness of the film quite nicely. And this is the most consistently entertaining piece of the movie. The mistake we have with the Jason Momoa character is that the film could have used more of him in the first half of the movie to lighten the serious tone and give us a sense of consistency with the tone, the feel, and the entertainment value of the story. Fast 10 is exactly what you would expect if you've seen the other Fast and Furious films, and I do want to give the producers, writers, and directors credit for creating a movie business model that extends their demographic to a wider branch of audiences compared to the first trio of Fast and Furious films, and they have a set vision of formula to their madness. But I too have a formula with these films, which is fast and furiously pressing the fast forward button to the third act and just watching that, because that is the only entertaining thing about these movies, and you wouldn't miss too much of the story or anything that really happens, and it will also save you about 90 minutes of your time. I'm giving Fast 10 2 stars. And that's a cut on this week's edition of The Movie Wire. I want to thank you for listening and thank you for your support. You can also show support by following me on Instagram, Twitter, and Letterboxd at Movie Wire Show. And don't forget to leave me a review on Apple Podcasts. Until next week, do me a favor. Make sure you stay for after the credits to show the respect to those that put their blood, sweat, and tears into making a feature film and support your local movie theaters.
A verdict has been made on this episode of The Movie Wire by your host, Justin Henson. He thanks you for listening to the show. You can follow Justin on Instagram and Twitter at MovieWireShow or visit his website, www.themoviewire.com. Oh, and don't forget to leave a review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. I'm sure he'd love to hear from you. Until next time, we will see you at the movies.
Thank you for bringing me to the movies.